Welcome back. We are taking on Countryside Tour in ZRL 3 times up the Temple KOM. The KOM itself is pretty short. It's about half of the amount of climbing, but it is the steepest part with a long descent below and then rinse, wash, repeat twice. Riding with Dirty Rascals Ambush in the Lilac Development League, so 9:45 Eastern Time. I'll skip right to the sprint because nothing happened. It was basically a Zone 1, Zone 2 ride, except for the KOMs. Showing you here, somebody went off the front on the first sprint, right into the action, because it was about an hour and a half long race, and most of it was just sitting. So here we are approaching the KOM, coming up to it. And honestly, up until this point, you see my average is about 196 watts. And that's after the initial kind of lead into the climb. Left turn into the KOM, onto the dirt. Now, people talked about bike swaps and stuff, but it wasn't worth it at all this time around. The time to swap your bike and then onto a gravel and then do the climb and then swap back 3 times, you're going to lose the group. I think I overheard it working maybe in some other fields, maybe if you got dropped and you wanted to see if you can make up some time, but I didn't think bike swap was going to be in play, and so I didn't. As you can see, I have a draft van as my power up for this lap. Everyone's pretty fresh. We haven't really dropped anybody. So it's a relatively big group from our starting kind of 28, 30. I know it says that there's 33 riders, but there's usually a couple of guys in the pen acting as team car or something like that. So the numbers are a bit off. A couple guys go off the front here on the steep bit. I'll be honest, on this first go around, I was not feeling great. I was feeling a bit rough. You know, my heart rate's at 180 and I'm thinking to myself, oh man, this is going to be a long night. I'm only 20 minutes in and I'm kind of struggling to stay with the pack here. I'm trying to conserve as much as I can and knowing that I have to do this 2 more times afterwards, but I'm also concerned I'm going to get dropped. And I almost got dropped there. I had to kind of put in a dig, which I don't think really helped my teammate Phil there. Apologies. Things got strung out quite a bit early on this climb. I had to use my power up there to try to make it up to the rest of the wheels. Thankfully stuck with them and did not get dropped, despite the fact that I really did think I would. I think development is, where I belong right now, working my way back to fitness. Here's another time I thought I was going to get dropped and a bit of a gap forms, 2 seconds. Thankfully that guy jumps in the wheel. Cam jumps into the wheel. Those 2 Z Sunner guys helped me out there. And now there's a bit of a descent, so you can see my heart rate's 180, kind of sticking at the 180 range, and I'm hoping I can recover. You can see it coming down already. Thankfully, I'm recovering somewhat, but the downhill was, pretty uneventful. Just a whole lot of kind of 100, 110, 115 watt nonsense. So here we are again. We've passed the lap banner, and Dean hits level 100 on Zwift, which means he spent a significant amount of time riding his bike on Zwift. So kudos to Dean there, to use the Strava term. And again, here we are, kind of sitting zone 1 in this case, and just hanging out, chatting with the other guys. Dean's mic wasn't working very well, so he was typing out the chat to us, and so we were asking him questions and then he would respond to the entire group. So we were talking about who on OTR was a climber and who was a sprinter, etc. So we're kind of showing everyone our tactics, but doesn't really matter. I made a joke, it was an Ask Me Anything for Dean there, but it's all good. Here we are coming up to the sprint again. Some joking around with Dean and some of the other guys going for FTS, even though there's no preems. This is a scratch race. So Dean decides to go for fun, I guess. He's having a good time. And then builds himself a bit of a gap here. And it takes us a while to get to him. Look, like here we are 40 minutes in, and we sort of still haven't caught him, which was pretty funny. You know, I guess we were always going to catch him because he sort of came off the power, but it was an entertaining little time anyway, and maybe a bit of foreshadowing for later. So here we are in the kind of middle of the climb. Before the climb, you can see the pace is pretty pedestrian, in the, you know, high 100s, low 200s at this point. You know, not a whole lot going on. This is kind of where most Zwift races end, in the 40-minute range. So I was feeling okay. Wasn't sure how my legs were going to feel on the KOM going up that second time. But, you know, here we are. My strategy, my tactic this time was to try to stay closer towards the front. So that's why I'm, you know, purposefully kind of sitting in the front wheels, sitting in the draft, but not all the way at the back because I was a bit afraid of getting dropped. So I was fighting for position going into the KOM, hoping that if there was a big push, you know, I'd be close to be able to make the selection. And here we go, starting the climb again. You can see the fastest time was 6:22 set by my teammate Max, and my PR was 6:26 on the night so far. And I think, and you can tell me otherwise, but I think I handled this second trip up the KOM a lot better than the first time. You can see I have a draft fan again. I stayed in the wheels. I didn't kind of hang on and tailgun as much as I kind of otherwise would. I think that's partly, you know, a confidence in my fitness, but also just wanting to make sure that, you know, nobody really takes off and creates a gap and holds it. Well, somebody from another team anyway. So I'm trying to stay in the first 10 wheels or so, and you know, be within striking distance of an attack. This is kind of the flat part of the KOM where you get a bit of a breather, and these always screw me up. I find even on climbs everywhere else, as soon as there's a flat part, I kind of lose my cadence, my rhythm, and then I sit back a little too much, and then I have a hard time winding up again. You can see me grinning there. So my heart rate's mid 180s now. You know, still trying to stick with the pack, but you can see some guys are starting to spread things out. It's getting a bit thin. Thankfully comes back together. And this is kind of the last little bit of the KOM flat part before it starts to climb again. And it's pretty steep here. I'm out of the saddle. And again, trying to stay with these guys. They all have feathers, so they all kind of jump up and take off on me when I had my draft fan. And they form a bit of a gap, and you get spread out again at the same spot, just cresting over the KOM. But I'm in much better place this time. I don't have to really dig that hard to stick with the wheels. And at this point, my teammate Max decides he's gonna have a bit of a dig and attacks the front. You can see him out in the front there. Creates a few second gap going into the downhill. Now everyone's thinking, well, he's by himself. We're in a big group. We'll catch him. But that's not really what happened. Fast forward a little bit, and he's got an even bigger gap on the flats. We've got a group of, I don't know, 15, 16 guys, and nobody's really pushing hard to try to catch him. Dean cracking some jokes there. And this was kind of the only time where the group, led by, I think, OTR, maybe Z-Sun, really tried to do something to catch him. And ultimately, Max just kept growing his lead and growing his lead and growing his lead. So it was well done by him. Here we are going into the KOM. You can see him in the mini map on the top. He's already started the KOM. He's, gone around the bend already, and we're all just kind of putzing away at like high 100 watts. And we're all just happy to let this happen because our teammate's out in front by, a pretty fair margin. And I'm wondering what the heck's going to happen here, because there's, again, a relatively large group going into the KOM. Somebody digs pretty hard to, create a split, but we all kind of stick with them. This is at the start of the KOM, by the way. Oh, and look, draft fan, no feather at all on these climbs whatsoever. Almost get dropped here, managed to make up the gap. Thankfully, that was a bit of a scary moment, but I had to burn a match there. Sticking on Nels' wheel. I had a lot of teammates. I think we were 4 or 5 up here in this main group, which was super helpful because you see a teammate's jersey and you know that you've got a wheel that you can trust, that you can follow, and give a call out if you need a bit of a hand. So about halfway through the KOM climb, still at a decent pace, mid 180s. I am feeling it, but I kind of feel better than I did on the first go, I'll be honest. I was struggling on the first time around, and even though I'm working pretty hard here, and you can tell by, again, my heart rate is high 180s, I'm settling into a rhythm that I know I can sustain. And here we are coming up to this flat area again, which always messes with my rhythm, but I had kind of made a mental note of it, that I was going to kind of push through it a little bit more than I normally would. And you can see me grinning there, trying to close that gap. There's a few seconds I almost get dropped, but I'd managed to jump on Dean's wheel, and here I am with this sort of second group. There's a split that happens just ahead of me with about 3 seconds between us. I had to use my draft fan to make up the gap there, but no matter how hard I'm trying here, I just can't make up that spread. Me and this Sisu guy just can't make it, and it's a bit disheartening. I'm working hard. Dean puts in a really good dig here to kind of push through and get this group going, and he and I sort of leapfrog each other to help each other through the climbs. And there's a 13-second gap to the next OTR, 14-second gap to the next OTR guy who crosses the line. At this point, I'm thinking, all right, well, there's a 13-second gap and we're going downhill. I know that from other races, some of the downhills gaps got closed rather quickly. So I just pushed here. I was like, I'm not done climbing. I'm going to keep going. I don't care if I drag this group in with me. I'm not going to settle for 8th place. So I just push hard. And this Kosei guy from Coalition decides he's going to join me. And so we're just pushing hard on this downhill, really trying to make up the gap. Although, 15 seconds is pretty far. And we catch a couple of the other dudes who then try to stay on, and we're pushing. We are actually pushing downhill. I know the numbers don't seem super huge. I know I have a couple teammates out front. At this point, Max is like 50 seconds ahead, so I'm pretty sure he's got the win. And I think we have Matt and Nels in the group ahead of me, and then it's Dean and I in this group. And Dean just told me that he had a van power up, and then I ended up with a feather. Go figure. There goes this Kosei guy who's pushing the pace again. And again, we're not doing huge watts here, but an hour and 20 minutes in, going into a finish, which is downhill, trying to make up 15 seconds. And if you look to the right, we've made up 5 of those seconds, and I see it. And then Dean just bolts through me, and I'm like, okay, here we go. We're going to make up this gap. And I had it in my mind that we were going to close it and catch these guys. So there's a kilometer left and they're still 6 seconds ahead of us. And we're just motoring. And let me slow it down here for you. This is the last kind of 700 meters. Dean accidentally deploys his draft fan and goes for 600 go, which doesn't give me much of a choice, but I step on it, trying to catch that group ahead of me. And then at this point, I know I'm going fast enough. So I lay off the power, knowing I'm going to do a bit of a double take here. And this is the final sprint. They all have arrows. I have a feather, and I managed to snag second, which was pretty awesome. Final results: Dirty Rascals ambushed with a commanding 1-2-3 finish on the rivet with a second place overall. Very strong night for ambush. We were all pretty stoked with the results, and we'll see you next week.